Hey everyone, I'm Blake Householder. I worked at YouTube from 2011 to 2018. I've been seeing a bunch of articles about YouTube trying to intentionally slow down Firefox or whatever, and I think there's kind of a different story going on here. Put on my special Jackie O shirt from YouTube. Probably no one will get the reference, but they gave this to us in 2011 for redesigning the site. So there are some reasons that Google Web Apps don't work as well in Firefox, but they're not really nefarious. So, okay, let me just launch into the explanation. So first off, I don't know if you've thought about it very much, but Google engineers have to choose some kind of developer setup to use. So they have to choose a particular computer with operating system and a browser that they're going to use, especially web developers. Browser matters a lot. Google doesn't use Windows. So they use Mac OS and their own version of Linux. And probably the majority of web developers at Google use Mac OS, and then they have to pick a browser. And what do you think they pick? Yeah, they pick Chrome. They all pick Chrome. And it's not that Google forces Chrome on anyone. You can run Firefox, Safari, other browsers that just about no one cares about. But for the most part, if you walk around a Google office and you see a bunch of developers working on web stuff, they're all going to have Chrome open. They're going to have a bunch of Chromes open. They're going to have a million tabs open. It's all going to be Chrome. They're going to have the developer tools open, either next to it or underneath. And there will be the one guy, maybe, who uses Firefox for some reason. And that's about it. So this happens at all companies. Like every company I've ever been at, like people have to pick. They don't rotate through all the different browsers. So people are going to notice errors and fix errors and prioritize errors on the particular setup that they work on. So like if some problem is occurring on Windows with Chrome, Google web developers aren't going to know about it. Maybe it gets reported through some other channel, but they're not just going to find it on their own. They might find it through automated tests, other channels, but still, they're going to see what they see. They can't see anything else. And a lot of bugs are just caught by the people who are working that particular surface. So, if you're working on maps or whatever, you're going to see maps bugs. And then you're going to go, oh, okay, there's a maps bug. I'm going to add that to the bug tracker. I'm going to fix it. And if if a bug were to happen in Windows from you clicking the same things, you don't know, right? Like, how are you going to know about it? So something else, some other channel has to report it. And that's really important. Like, it happens at Microsoft for sure. Everyone there uses Windows, right? And so they're not going to notice problems that occur in their software in Mac OS or especially Linux. They're just not going to notice. And then I'm not sure, but I would guess they mostly use Edge there. And so they're not going to notice problems in Chrome. And so when you say, oh, Microsoft site's not running as well in Chrome, like it's not really part of the conspiracy, unless the conspiracy is everyone at Microsoft has to choose a particular browser to do their work in, right? But they're just not going to know. So that has a real practical consideration. Like, every org has to do that. You definitely see that with things like Google Maps. I don't know if you tried using Google Maps in the San Francisco Bay Area, like try navigating between two Google offices and then taking that trip. It works really well. There's no problems. It navigates you just fine. Try moving to Texas like I did. And suddenly it's like, what? Texas? I've never seen this before. And in Texas on freeways, we have special U-turn only lanes. So if you need to exit the freeway and then reverse direction, you just take a dedicated U-turn lane. But in Google Maps, it says, take a sharp left, then another sharp left. And so I'll say it's a California U-turn or whatever, because Maps is seemingly unaware of this particular practice in Texas, because the developers of Maps, the product managers, the people who care and report bugs, they don't drive in Texas very much. And so they just don't report that bug. And so it just sort of mechanically says, oh, well, I guess you're going to have to turn left. You're going to have to turn left again, instead of make a U-turn, which would make a lot more sense. I worked at Zoom for a while. They have a really good chat in Zoom, and it's exactly appropriate for the type of organization that Zoom is. And it's not exactly Slack. It's a little bit different. And when bugs affect the kind of workflows that people do at Zoom in chat, they report them and they fix them. But that doesn't mean they don't care about your particular issue. It's just, hey, what are they going to see? Okay. So another thing I see at a lot of organizations is almost all of the designers, like all the UX designers, use iPhones. If you've seen an organization that works differently, like they use Android, let me know. But even at Google, all the designers have iPhones because, I don't know, they're the designers and has the most design. It's designed by Apple in California. I don't know, whatever. And almost all the executives use iPhones. I don't really know why that's the case, but they sure love them. At PayPal, at Google, everywhere. It's all iPhones. And so guess what kind of bugs get prioritized in the mobile apps? It's not Android. And pretty much every tech firm that I've been at or know about, Android bugs are very much second class. And there's always Android developer team, and they're like, yeah, they don't care about us as much, yeah. And there'll be fewer staff on that particular team, and often things just don't move as fast. Maybe it's someplace like, I don't know, GitHub, somewhere that's very developer focused, they would care about Android, but iOS is always first class citizen. And it's just because who uses it? Another thing we would commonly see is designers would develop mocks for iOS and then just not for Android. Just, good luck. Just try and implement it on Android, make it look about the same. Get rid of the iOS-y bits, whatever. But that's the way things work. People have to pick. It's, I don't know, I guess it's a conspiracy, but each individual person is choosing on their own. They're not necessarily being told to in any kind of top-down way. And I don't know if anyone watching this is going to be old enough to remember when Firebug came out, but oh boy, do I remember. So everyone doing web development, just about, was using Internet Explorer at the time, because Internet Explorer was the fastest browser, it supported things the best, and you knew that your customers were using it probably. It was like 80, 90%. But then when Firebug came out, suddenly it became possible to develop in JavaScript. Before that, it was absolutely agonizing because you would, like, at least in my case, I'd be setting all these alerts throughout my page. I'd be trying to get the page to just write stuff directly into the DOM to help debug. It was super hard to debug because most of your feedback was just it crashed. But when Firebug came out, it was possible to actually debug things. And so then suddenly the web started working really, really well on Firefox. And it's because all the web developers were using it because it was possible to actually debug stuff. And the experience of trying to debug stuff on Firefox is a lot less good. I'll say that. So let's see. Okay, so as far as Firefox, I had to do some development on Chrome and also Firefox, and God forbid, Safari or Edge, and it was awful. So a bug would come in, and you'd see this bug, and it would be like, site crashes to black screen when user clicks on contact us button or something. And you're like, oh, why didn't anyone pick this bug up already? And they're like, it only happens in Firefox. And it'd be like, hey, Blake, do you want to do it? And I'd be like, okay, I guess. And I cannot overstate how much that was like not an exaggerated enough reaction. It was so incredibly frustrating to have to work on stupid Firefox. I just hated it because you'd open the DevTools and nothing worked quite as well. And you'd run JavaScript and there'd be all these other problems that are just little Firefox problems. It just does things slightly out of order, or it doesn't trap an event quite right, or it has a different model for how events should work. Also, stuff breaks in it for no apparent reason that doesn't break in Chrome. But I don't think you'd see as many bugs where it works in Firefox but breaks in Chrome. Those seem to be farther between. And I think it might just be that Chrome has a lot more development support behind it, and so does Chromium. But oh my God, Firefox had all of its own little special snowflake bugs, and they were extremely infuriating to work on. They would just be this enormous time suck. You would spend an entire day fixing one Firefox issue where you could have fixed several things in Chrome. So it sucks to develop on. It sucks to try and automate. And so, as you would expect, test automation suffers. Chrome has headless Chrome. Chrome has all these great tools for automating because, hey, Google wants to automate all their tests for all their web apps, and they use Chrome. And so they build automation support in. And then all those people, pat themselves on the back. They all get promoted for it. But also, it means it's this really great ecosystem to develop on and build web apps on. Firefox, not so much. It's pretty frustrating. And that sort of second-class everything, like, to me, it feels like a second-class browser with a second-class engine, second-class dev tools, second-class automated testing support. You still support it because you're like, hey, lots of people use this. It's very important to us. People at Google want everything to work on everything. If they could just get it for free, they would. But it is not free. It is very expensive to support Firefox. It is very frustrating. It's a real drain on your, I don't know, engineering ability. It makes you want to go home at 5 o'clock at the end of the day. You're not like, oh boy, I sure am passionate about fixing this Firefox bug. And it's like, no, I'm done with this. I'll pick it back up tomorrow. It's super frustrating. And you see that everywhere. And I will admit, Chrome was constantly changing the font rendering by less than 1 pixel. And it was super frustrating because it would trigger all our automated tests. But other than that, working on Chrome was definitely a pleasure. It was a pleasure. It was easy. It felt like it was trying to help you. Firefox just felt like it was actively working against you just a little bit. It was dragging its feet, I guess. It's not being mean about it. It's just like, you're going to have to work for this bug. And it felt actively frustrating. So another reason that you'll see these stories or whatever about Google Web Apps not working on Firefox or something like that, or I don't know, insert company's web app here with browser here, is because people only call out the ones that look like some kind of suspicious conspiracy. So if, I don't know, you go to PayPal and it doesn't work on Edge, is that some kind of conspiracy for Microsoft to screw over PayPal? Or PayPal to make it not work as well on Microsoft browsers? Like, probably not. Nobody accuses them of that. But when a Google property doesn't work on Firefox, oh man, that must be the browser wars 2.0, 3.0, whatever. And so there are entire classes of bugs that are rendered invisible to the media because they're not between two competing titans that they want to be having a faction dispute between. So, YouTube breaks on Opera. Does anyone care? Is it part of the conspiracy? I guess Opera people would care. If Mozilla's start page breaks on Chrome, have you ever heard about that? Do a lot of people use Mozilla's start page? I don't know. I use it once when I install Firefox, and then I set the homepage to be blank. That's about the only time I ever see it. I don't think I've ever navigated to it on Chrome. So I don't even know if it renders the page at all, probably. I bet it works. But I just don't care, and I think a lot of people don't care. Do you hear about stuff like this for Safari and Edge? I feel like there are some people who open up a Mac and they use Safari. It's the default. There's probably a lot of people who get a new computer with Windows and they use the internet on it, which is Edge. But you don't hear as much about stories between these browsers. It just, nobody cares. Also, the media doesn't use them as much. So, something slows down on not Chrome and it's a Google web property, you hear about it. So there's going to be this huge observation and reporting bias around these things. I'm sure that Mozilla is also well-meaning. They're not going to break stuff on purpose on sites they control or in their browser. And I've talked to some of those people. I've worked with them before on different bugs and different amounts of browser support between things. And they use their browser to browse stuff. So those are the kinds of problems that they're going to notice. They don't notice, Chrome not rendering correctly on Mozilla properties unless it rises up in their logs to the level of statistical significance. And further, when you look at an article like YouTube punishes ad blocker users, blah blah blah, do you see the same thing with Gmail, Maps, Docs? How deep does the conspiracy go? Do all those sites work worse on Firefox? And there was another article I saw where a guy is sort of saying yes. So we'll get into that. But I feel like you don't see that as much. And I think it's because the people at Mozilla are watching a lot of YouTube. In all honesty, that's going to be my guess. They tend to notice this sort of thing. The people who are using Firefox are also watching a lot of YouTube. Maybe not doing so much work in Google Docs, but they watch a lot of YouTube. And so they definitely notice when something gets slowed down. And so again, bit of observation bias there. I would also argue that it's a slightly different issue, but the laser of criticism is always focused on Microsoft, Google, Apple, whatever those big tech companies are. I guess it's because there's so many thousands of people working there, it's easy to imagine there are conspiracies all over the place. And so once in a while, people will bring up, don't attribute to malice what can be explained by incompetence. But our friend over at Mozilla says, I don't believe Google is that incompetent. And I'm not going to come back and say, oh, yes, they're definitely that incompetent. But it's not, it's still easy to have 50 people working together on something and get some kind of collective result out of it because of their individual incentives. So he has this implicit assumption that Mozilla is super competent. Mozilla is able to detect exactly what it is that Google is doing. They can't provide any hard proof of it, of course, but they can tell. They can tell that the conspiracy is there. But if you talk to Googlers about it, they can't tell. maybe they're all collectively refusing to break their NDA because they got to protect their stock grants. But like, why does Mozilla think it's like the most awesome conspiracy detector ever, and Google somehow doesn't notice this conspiracy within? And I feel like it's because you just see this criticism levied at like Google or Microsoft or Apple or whatever, and you don't see it on other firms. Like I don't see as many people accusing Mozilla of doing nefarious things, and that's fine. They're probably not, but Google isn't doing too many of them either. What else did he say? Oh, he said, I think our friends inside Google genuinely believe that at the individual level, their engineers cared about most of the same things we did. Their product and design folks made many decisions very similarly, and we learned from watching each other. Oh, that sounds nice. But Google as a whole is very different than individual Googlers. Okay, so how would that work? Like, that sounds nice. Sure, Google as a whole is different. Okay, conspiracy proved. But what does that mean? Like, somebody at Google has to be saying, like, let's put our thumb on the scale. Let's screw over Firefox on all our web properties, or some of them. Let's pick one. YouTube, that's a good one. Who is that person? Like, who's the director of conspiracy against Firefox at Google? Like, there'd have to be some person or multiple people who are like, let's do this. Would they mess with the prioritization of bugs? Would they write down PRDs and they would be like, here in great detail is how we're going to screw over Firefox? It's sort of hard to imagine how exactly that's going to work. And then once you involve somebody and then you involve their subordinates and you say, okay, you guys are in charge of implementing the conspiracy, like go engineer it, engineers. All these people have to keep it secret. And I feel like journalists would be screaming about this one Google engineer who came out and said, oh yeah, actually, I was in charge of sabotaging Firefox on maps. I was in charge of it on docs or whatever. I don't think you're ever going to find that engineer, because I don't think that engineer exists. There is no like Google as a whole who's trying to like get Firefox in this particular way. They're definitely trying to get them in terms of out competing with them as they are with everything else. But there's not really like the chief sabotage officer or whatever. I don't know how this guy is imagining this conspiracy would work exactly. And I think you can easily imagine how 50 individual Googlers could come to this guy and say, yeah, we're trying to fix things. We're trying to fix things for Firefox. And then Google as a whole is still like, I don't want to work on Firefox bugs. I don't use Firefox on my dev machine. Like, I wish you all the best, but I have my reasons for not prioritizing your stuff. I don't think there's some guy who's secretly going through every single bug in the bug tracker and he's deprioritizing Firefox bugs. Also, when we look at our logs, we'd say, do I really have to fix this Firefox bug? I really don't want to. And we'd look and it'd be like, Firefox is 3% of users, or 6% on this property or whatever. And we'd be like, okay, that's enough to justify it. And then we sort of grudgingly work on it. Firefox consistently has just enough market share that it justifies fixing their bugs if they're bad enough. But I think a lot of us were sort of hoping for a day where it just didn't have enough share for us to have to fix the bugs. It wasn't that we needed Chrome to win. It was just that we wanted some browser that didn't have special classes of bugs to win. Like, I sort of wish Firefox would just use Chromium internally and otherwise do all the cool Firefox stuff, and then it wouldn't have all these classes of bugs. But, oh my God. Let's see. Oh, right. Okay, so also our conspiracy guy at Mozilla says, all of this is stuff you're allowed to do to compete, of course, but we're still a search partner. So we'd say, hey, what gives? And every time they'd say, oops, that was accidental. We'll fix it in the next push in 2 weeks. Over and over. Oops, another accident. We'll fix it soon. We want the same things. We're on the same team. There were dozens of oopses, hundreds maybe. Well, what do you expect? Like, how else is this going to look? Like, do you work with Microsoft and Microsoft fixes all the bugs in advance of you finding out about them? Like, how would that work? That's how bugs work. You find out about a bug and then you cannot fix it before the next push. And pushes occur on some schedule. I don't know who does it in 2 weeks. Maybe he's talking about dealing with Chrome. YouTube was on a weekly release schedule, last I remembered, and other properties would release, like internal parts of it could release faster than that, like internal services. But you can't fix a bug faster than the push if you have a push cycle. You fix it, it goes into testing, you have like a big the push, and then it goes out, and then you can't fix stuff the next day. And so I don't know what he's expecting. This sounds good, like, oh, oops, and we're like, that's how we get you. You know, we make you wait until you report the bug, and then we fix it immediately, and then get it out in the next push. And he's like, haha, the push delay. And I don't know what he's hoping for. Every company I've ever worked at has this kind of schedule. So like Zoom, PayPal, like YouTube, Reddit, they all have these problems. They all have to wait for the push. They have to wait until the bug gets detected. They mostly don't fix it preemptively. I don't even know what that would be. Some kind of awesome self-healing system that detects the bug and then gets rid of it before this guy can complain. I don't know. How would that work? Maybe that's, now that I think about it, maybe that's not exactly what he said and the journalist quoted him wrong. I don't know. But I'm sort of struggling to think of how he could come up with this thing to say. And then the journalist would just sort of uncritically report it. Like, oh yeah, there are hundreds of oopses. And then they made us wait till the next push. And it's like, yeah, you mean like bugs and fixing bugs at an organization? Yeah, that. Okay. Must be a conspiracy then. They fix bugs exactly like everyone else. They're out to get us. Super confusing. So I found this article through Hacker News until I found it through everything. Hacker News, first comment immediately links to, here's what JavaScript does. And it's like, oh, it's related to detecting ad blockers. And it's just JS code that gets served to certain browsers. And then it always waits 5 seconds. And so it's like, okay, when this journalist was making this criticism, did he have anybody check and see, like, what is this JavaScript code exactly? When they had our conspiracy theorists at Mozilla talk about this, had he analyzed, like, what's going on here? Because I feel like their mental model was just, they're out to get Firefox. They put in a 5-second slowdown, which is super noticeable, and then hoped we wouldn't figure out that it was only occurring on Firefox. And they just hoped that it would like tank metrics for Firefox, tank install. I'm sort of trying to figure this out. So there's going to be a 5-second delay, which is super noticeable, but nobody's going to notice that it's only on Firefox. But also they're going to notice it hard enough that they're going to uninstall Firefox forever and they're going to switch to Chrome because YouTube slowed down. And this is part of like the overall strategy. Like if you really think about it, it's like, how does this work? Like, if you were trying to sabotage Firefox, wouldn't you make it like crash 1% of the time? Or something that's not as noticeable as a 5-second delay at the start of a video. Like, it doesn't even make sense as a conspiracy. Like, I'm sort of thinking through it, and it's like, okay, say I wanted to be in charge of sabotaging Firefox. Would I do it like this? And it's like, no, I wouldn't even consider this. And so it's really weird to just go ahead and say, oh, I saw a 5-second delay. I saw one video on Reddit. Like, this must be part of Google's conspiracy to destroy, I don't know, everything else besides Google. It's actually a weird jump in logic to make. But anyway, uncritically reported, picked up by everyone. I see it on ZDNet. I saw it on Android Central. I saw it, like, everyone. Probably this is just forever going to be in the record. They're going to be like, remember that time YouTube was slowing down in Firefox on purpose? Yeah, I remember that. I remember when they totally did it on purpose as part of their conspiracy. It definitely makes a lot of sense, yeah. Not the first accusations. Yeah, this happened in 2018 when Google switched to Polymer. And, oh boy, yeah. I remember, when YouTube switched to Polymer. Yeah, I remember when that happened. That was a whole thing. And Polymer just didn't work as well on Firefox. And the decision was made to move ahead anyway, and it was not because it was going to hurt Firefox. It was because they just wanted to move forward anyway. And if anyone at YouTube could have just snapped their fingers and made it work on Firefox, they absolutely would have. And especially if one person could have done it, they probably would have gotten promoted because they would have been like, I'm the savior. I fixed it on Firefox. It may be a surprise to some people, but Google wants YouTube to work on all browsers. And it just didn't, and it was really hard to fix, and getting it to be merely slower on Firefox and Edge was already a monumental effort. And it's too bad, but it was definitely not intentional. I'll reveal my secret insider information there. It was not intentional. But I don't know. This guy, everywhere he looks, he sees a Google conspiracy against Mozilla. I guess it makes sense. Am I similarly biased? Everywhere I look, I see Google trying to do the right thing. I don't know. Maybe I just have the same bias, but going the other direction. But I would like to argue, so there's this quote: don't attribute to malice what can be explained by incompetence. They say it in the article, I've heard it before. It's nice, but I would say don't attribute to either what can be explained by the simple incentives of an organization of people. If all the people are just doing the thing they're incentivized to do, that's going to kind of dictate your outcome. They don't have to be malicious, and they don't have to be incompetent. They just have to say, it sucks to fix bugs in Firefox. I'm going to move its priority down a little bit. This bug isn't that bad. I'm not going to work on it yet. Or we don't have automated tests for Firefox. We'd love to, but we don't. So we don't catch bugs. And I think that this probably exists at every organization that has a browser or web property or a mobile app. They have to make these calls. They can't support every single platform equally, and they don't. And they do the best they can. For the most part, everyone wants their thing to work on everything else. And the conspiracies to hurt something by owning one of those properties are few and far between. And I think the media loves a good beef, but I don't think this is one.